member states, but also civil societies, the private sector, youth, academia, all contribute in one form or another in order to achieve a sustainable development agenda, in our case, in Asia and the Pacific. Particularly when we talk about IT, internet technology, that has become a very topical issue if you are keeping up with current events. So that is why it is important that when we talk about topics related to information and technology, each one of us from our respective perspectives, fields, and background have something to contribute. And this is where it is important that platforms such as this provide that venue in order for us to exchange, in order for us to learn from other experiences and expertise. Because when we talk about connectivity, particularly in the digital space, it is, as I mentioned earlier, it has to involve all parties from all parts of sectors of society. And it is only through this discourse that we are able to address the challenges. And the challenges can be in terms of access or regulatory frameworks. But of course, when we talk about policies, again, this is where inputs from the various stakeholders are important. But most importantly, when we engage in these discussions, we have to bring in the successes. We have to give into the perspectives that governments need to take into account, because that is where formulation of policies will take place. It is exactly the narratives that are presented by the speakers, but also during the interventions that will take place. So arising from all these discussions, we will also try to take note in terms of what are some of the issues or challenges that are being faced. Use that as an impetus to further discuss in other platforms, either it be here at ESCAP or in other relevant venues and agencies. So at the end of the day, it is important that through our discussions, we have a greater and better understanding between the nexus between the various factors that hinder digital participation and connectivity. So I see that we will have presentations of case studies, perspectives being presented by not only social entrepreneurship, but also from
right. I found like 100 bots.
Very involved or very active.
Hair coloring, and I just did it at home on Saturday. Yeah.
So with that, again, thank you very much for your participation, both in person as well as online. And I look forward to discussions and see how we can further promote digital connectivity in Asia. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Sorakusuma. Next, I would like to introduce you to Mr. Gomer Padong from the Institute for Social Entrepreneurship in Asia to provide us with an introduction and to moderate the rest of the session.
Thank you, Madel, and welcome to our side event on community-centered connectivity initiatives for sustainable development in Asia and the Pacific. This associated event will explore the vital role of community-centered connectivity initiatives and complementary solutions in advancing sustainable development in the region. As digital inclusion becomes increasingly essential, these grassroots efforts empower marginalized communities by providing affordable and reliable internet access. The relevance of these topics actually align with the Asia-Pacific Forum on Sustainable Development 2025 theme, focusing on inclusive and sustainable growth. The associated event will specifically examine how these initiatives contribute to the SDGs by fostering local ownership and participation, community-centered connectivity, and other complementary solutions that can bridge the digital divide and enhance resilience against socioeconomic challenges. Furthermore, discussions will connect to recent outcomes from the Global Digital Compact and the Right Energy Partnership, emphasizing the need for equitable energy solutions that support digital infrastructure. We also partnered with the Right Energy Partnership and Indigenous Peoples Major Group to provide perspectives, showcasing how culturally relevant connectivity solutions can empower these communities, ensuring their voices are heard in the digital landscape. The event aims to foster dialogue among stakeholders, including policymakers, community leaders, and technology practitioners to identify best practices as well as move with collaborative strategies. And maybe to kick us off in terms of knowing what community-centered connectivities are, the principles and typology behind typology of community-centered connectivity initiatives, I'd like to call on our first speaker, Carlos Rey Moreno of the Association for Progressive Communications. Carlos is joining us from the Philippines this morning. Carlos, over to you, please.
Hello, everyone. Thank you very much, Gomer, and thank you very much, ESCAP in the Asia Pacific Forum on Sustainable Development for this opportunity to discuss this topic with all of you today. Let me share my screen. Can you see the screen?
Yes.
Yes? Okay. So I'm gonna present today about the principles and typology for community-centered connectivity that we've been developing from the LogNet initiative that I co-manage. And the LogNet initiative is a collective effort led by the Association for Progressive Communications and Rhizomatica in partnership with grassroots communities and support organizations in Africa, Asia, and Latin America and the Caribbean. And it aims to support meaningful community-centered connectivity initiatives while contributing to an enabling environment to see their emergence and growth. And to do that, we partner with many of the organizations that are behind this event, and including the Institute for Social Entrepreneurship in Asia and ISOC, and some of the other speakers. A bit about APC. It's an international network of civil society organizations founded in 1990, dedicated to ICTs for social justice. We have 62 organizational members and 29 individual members active in 73 countries. And I'm very happy that over and beyond ISEA, we also have our member DEF speaking today in this session, and looking forward to listening to Mr. Osama Mansar. And as mentioned, the LogNet initiative started in 2017, and we've been providing support to organizations working on community network development in more than 20 countries. APC holds UN ECOSOC and ITU sector member status, and we actively contribute to all their processes. And we also engage at policy training at regional and national level for regulators and policymakers, as well as contribute to consultations and technical assistance wherever required. But without further ado, let me talk to the principles of community-centered connectivity initiatives, and to talk a bit about the diversity of these models and the diversity of of community-centered connectivity initiatives as they adapt to the context and the needs of the communities wherever they are. Policy and regulatory frameworks are different. Communities do choose to organize themselves or organizations supporting them, alongside different incorporations, but they all have some things in common. And those are these principles that I would like to present today. They were the result of a very consultative process across our members and partners throughout mainly 2024, and we released them. The link is there, and I believe the organizers will share the presentation with all of you in case you want to read more about the process, right? And these are I'm gonna read them out, right? But the first principle is really what makes it different from traditional operators, which is really providing meaningful internet communications infrastructure or services to communities in urban, rural, and remote locations that respond to the diverse needs and interests of communities, so that they can be empowered to participate in their own development, right? This is about putting marginalized communities at the center rather than profit at the center of any internet deployment, right? Whereby there is, many of the internet developments that have taken place, in particular by big multinational private sector companies have been more centered in their own profit than in the development of those communities, right? And 30 years down the line from when the internet started, we see that there is a massive digital divide that prevents the realization of the Sustainable Development Goals precisely because of putting profit at the center when internet development is considered. Other principles that we saw that were common to these community-centered connectivity initiatives are that they are participatory in nature, so they enable the community to shape the infrastructure or services by participating in developing its community-centered vision and its deployment, operation, and use, that they work with different stakeholders to achieve its vision in ways that encourage the community's autonomy, but also that those other two principles around well-being and human rights that improve the personal, social, political, and economic lives of people living in the community, particularly for those who are structurally marginalized, such as women, the youth, and elderly, refugees, racial and ethnic minorities, and disabled people. And they also enable communication rights and other rights of community members, such as the rights to education and healthcare, as well as the collective rights of communities, including racial and ethnic minority communities and communities living in marginalized and threatened territories. We consider these first principles, these first five principles, those that are mostly common to all the community-centered connectivity initiatives. There are the remaining ones that are more aspirational, depending on how the communities and their partners put some of these aspirations at the center of their own initiatives, right? But these principles are also a way to allow for a conversation with the communities in the type of internet that they would like to see in their communities. One of these aspirational principles is about gender, right? About actively seeking to understand the gender power dynamics and the different lived realities within a community to encourage the participation of women in the governance, management, and use of the infrastructure services, and to integrate a gender perspective in its operations. We see how big is the gender digital divide and also how central to the SDGs gender is as well. Other aspirational principles talk about sustaining local cultures, traditional activities, and languages, particularly those that are under threat, and provide relevant, meaningful content in local languages and in an inclusive and accessible manner. It's about being environmentally aware, so by designing the infrastructure services in a way that contributes to the preservation of the environment and biodiversity of the territory, and with care for communities in those territories, that put or try to ensure or aspire to ensure the online safety of the community, especially vulnerable users and those most at risk from online and tech-facilitated harms, such as, again, women, the youth, and elderly, refugees, racial and ethnic minorities, and disabled people that are many times the target of many harmful activities in the internet. And also that aspire to sustain its operations considering local economic practices and values. Finally, there are three more aspirational principles that are in relation to building technical capacity in the community to maintain and operate the infrastructure services, and the digital capacity of users to make informed decisions about their internet use and to benefit from all the economic opportunities and social opportunities that are online. About ownership, some of these community-centered connectivity initiatives strive for community ownership of the infrastructure or services through open and inclusive participation in its governance and management, and that there is a need to, or a recognition that it is part of an ecosystem of similar ownership across the world that seeks to share experiences to help strengthen these initiatives and support collective multi-stakeholder action to build awareness of their potential for environmentally and socially sustainable internet access solutions. Right? So these are the 13 principles that the LogNet initiative, together with partners and members, came up with. This is a a proposal, right? There is not this is not a checklist. There is not a certification company behind any of them or a rubber stamp that will decide upon whether an initiative is community-centered or not. But we do see these principles as guiding the conversations of different actors that want to see the provision of internet moving away from putting profit at the center to putting the community at the center, right? This is the first time that we have developed these principles. We are pretty sure that they will evolve over time. And please send us any comment or question or feedback that you have, because we see them evolving in conversation with everyone around the world that is building these initiatives, right? We just were trying to kind of, put together these principles as a way that they respect the diversity of initiatives, but at the same time, they give them some guiding principles to work with or to start those conversations from. Together with these principles, we then went and studied several initiatives because they are very different in nature, right? As we were saying, they are very diverse. And we created this typology, again, the link is down in this slide, to see which type of models were meeting those principles, right? Especially the first fundamental ones, and in different capacity, the aspirational ones, right? And we saw that there were five types. I'm not going to go that much into them. They are here just for you to get a glimpse of what we saw, right? Just to say that those types were created alongside different characteristics, looking at their institutional model, their legal structure of the organization driving the initiative, the role of the community organization in the telecommunications value chain, that is talking about the operator ownership model, what is the way in which the initiative is planned and managed, where the initial investment and expansion of the infrastructure, the expenditure, the CapEx came from, what is the sustainability model or how the operational expenditure comes from, what type of pricing model for connectivity-related services they aim at providing, the nature of the services provided in the community, as well as the model for provision of transformational services. In this typology, I think something that became very apparent is that there are some models that are self-provision, and I believe Ms. Lisa or Dr. Lisa will be talking more about this. Some of these are pre-entrepreneurial models, more self-provision, some, in relation to how the main aspect is to cover the costs without any entrepreneurial activity behind it, simply covering the cost of connectivity, moving to other models that are more related to social enterprises. So one of the models is this one of self-provision. Imagine a community of very few households organizing themselves to get an internet connectivity in the community and sharing the cost of that internet connectivity and sharing the cost of spreading it in the community. And they don't have any other, let's say, purpose behind community development and providing the internet for their own benefit. There are municipal networks, and I believe many of the policymakers and regulators in the room, as well as I saw in the chat that there were representatives from local government units here in the Philippines, but also village enterprises in Indonesia and in some other countries. There are local governments that are looking into these initiatives as a way of satisfying the communication needs of the communities that they serve, right? So the municipal networks are other of these types in this typology. And then three types of social entrepreneurial models, one that are entrepreneurial nonprofits, other that are social cooperatives that are meeting as well the communication needs of the communities, as well as social businesses, right? Different models are putting, have a different alignment with the aspirational principles, right? For instance, a social business who is not starting from inside the community might not have in mind that the operation and the ownership of the network is transferred to them, but they still would meet those 5 initial fundamental principles that I mentioned. So with that, Gomer, back to you, back to the panel, and wishing you great discussions and really looking forward to hearing from the rest of the presentations today that I'm sure are going to be exciting. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Carlos. So from the principles, we will now move to a case study presentation, very local in Thailand. I'd like to invite my colleague, Nantapat Wesunawanarugs. Yes, I got your last name correct. Nantapat is from Net to Home, based here in Thailand.
All right. Good morning, everyone. My name is Nantapat Wesuwanarak. I'm from Net to Home, Thailand. I'm honored to be here at this event. I'm very excited. All right. This presentation based on work of Professor Kanchana, who bring the internet to Thailand, and also my colleagues, Nisa Ratanskun and myself, Nantapat Wesuwanarak. This talk will focus on the darknet and net to home. All right. Let's look at nowadays in darknet or net to home. Can I just... Okay. Now, today we have deployed the community network called darknet in more than 50 clusters and communities. The first site will be in the dark area. Now we expand to 42 clusters, and then we expand to Suphanduri, 6 community, and also 1 site in Chiang Dao, Chiang Mai area. And also it was 1 community in Bangkok during the COVID-19. Right. This map shows the coverage of area of the 4G and 5G. You can see that there are some areas that cannot access to the mobile operator or even the broadband internet. So that's why we need to initiate this project to help the people connected. All right, let's talk on the technology. The darknet first started from the Dumbonet. Dumbonet was developed by the Asian Institute of Technology, the Interlab, we call Interlab, right? It was designed for disaster and emergency response, right? And this come after the tsunami 2004. And then Professor Kanchana has the idea why we don't create the community network, the network that can be easily deployed in after the disaster. So we came up with the Dumbonet project, right? And from that, we can see the potential of use Dumbonet as a community network. So it's turned to the darknet. The first site that I told you, it started in 2013, and there are 14 routers which can connect it through the ad hoc links. So it also provide the Wi-Fi connectivity to the villagers. And also we have the USB drive that extend the storage. We can use that as storage for content delivery. So this is a darknet topology. There are 16 routers deployed around the village, and we can monitor the community network from outside. It will show the topology, the quality of the links, and also it will have the routings and the quality of the link from one house to another house. Right. This is in Thai Samaki area. We have deployed many villages, and one community has its own gateway, and that gateway connected to our net-to-home border router. They can talk to each other locally by using the outdoor device. They don't have to go to the internet and come back. They can just use our community network to connect theater. All right. So from the darknet, how to maintain that project? So we turned the darknet into social enterprise called Net2Home, and then this is the three parties that helped together to run the Net2Home. First, the Interlab, do the research and development. They provide out the new products and services to the Net2Home. And then from Net2Home is a micro SSP that is funded by the THNIC Foundation, which is a fundraising for the Net2Home. Then Net2Home has the equipment and the knowledge. So we provide the knowledge and device to the local community. Then when they deploy our community network, they have to pay the monthly fees, but it's a small amount of monthly fee that can be turned back to the technician in the local community. And from that money, they can run the network by themselves. Right, and also, we also have the academy called THNIC Academy. Actually, we provide many courses, but this one is the network operation training. So we provide the basic of network technology. And also, we also present the community networks case study to them, and how to design, how to create the network to the student or technician. And then they can come back to their home and create their own communities network. All right. I talk about the 10 years later in 2013, right? But now in that area, there are many commercial ISP or the mobile operator that provide the internet to them. So some of them moved to the commercial ISP, but some still use our community network. And then we have to think about what we can add to the community network. Right. We can have the connectivity from community network to the Net2Home border router, and then we connect to the internet exchange called Beaconics. Internet exchange is the internet exchange point is the provide the place that the commercial ISP connected together, and also provide the CDN server there, so we can share the traffic locally. We don't have to go to outside the country, right? This is provide a faster content delivery. Right. Next thing is the smart community. So we introduced the Internet of Things, or IoT, for the local community. We have this sensor, it's a small device, and it uses the darknet communities. So we deploy in our site, and then it can detect the air quality. So in this case, in this area, is in some in the early year they have the problem with the PM 2.5, so we can detect from that. And also we can detect the file from in the local place, like this one, in Thai Samaki village. So we can see the hotspot, and the red spot here is mean there's a high PM 2.5, and the local, the villagers there went to the place that near to the sensor, and they took the picture that the fire near the sensor. So it means there's a burning near their farm. And also we have the HESMON Plus and fire detection tracking. So we deploy the sensor around the area in Thai Samaki. Then we can find where is the source of the fire in that area from this algorithm, right? And we know this PM2.5 come from this area. So, and it validated by Professor Kanchana also. She went there and see there's a burning in that area. Right. And also we have the Bangpan distributed larger on Darknet. The Bangpan in Thai is mean sharing. So we provide a local community digital market for them in order to share their service or products in the local. And then they also can use this connect to their market to the outside world, right? And they can exchange their products and also selling to the outside world. And we have this Bangpan project in Thai is bangpan.an.th, or you can type the Thai name called Bangpan. All right, this is it for the Net to Home. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Kantapang.
Yes.
We will actually receive questions and answers in the open forum. But for now, may I invite from Thailand, we will now fly to India to look at the experience of community networks through the sharing of Osama Mansar from the Digital Empowerment Foundation India. Osama, over to you.
Hi, am I visible?
Yes, you are.
Okay, wonderful. You put me in the spot. I was still making my presentation. Okay, so I will only share, let me see if it is shareable. I have just one screen to show, but mostly to talk. Is it visible, my screen?
Yes, it is. But it's actually your dog. It's not your presentation. There you go. Here we go. Thank you. Over to you, Osama.
Okay, wonderful. So thank you very much. We have only about a few minutes, 7, 8 minutes, 9 minutes maybe. So listen, most of the time we talk about community networks in its very purity and how it has impacted. I will just share last 15 years of experience so that all of you also know. This screen is just to fill the screen, not really to what I'm going to talk, but this generally tells the story of how all of you, especially APC, ISOC, APNIC, GDIP, and many of you who has helped us to understand how community networks can be a very strong alternative to connect to the people who are far away, who are remote, who are unheard, who are marginalized, who are considered not developed, and so on and so forth. And thankfully, this technology or this methodology was available to us for a very, very long time. But we have been taking a very long time to understand and take advantage of it because we think that internet and connectivity is the sole responsibility of telcos. And telco's best responsibility is ARPU, which is that without benefit and profit, it's very difficult for them to go to the places where people are unconnected. So this is an example of how we have grown in the last 10-15 years to build about 284 networks across India, as you can see in the map. But I also want to say that all these 284 may not be functional because over a period of time, they may be in certain location where telcos have reached with much more force and with much better cost effectiveness for the consumers and affordability, and therefore they have left the community networks and they have migrated to the normal GSM based telco network. I want to share 5 learnings. One is what kind of points, what kind of network that we think that is possible and we have been able to. And I just started putting a point that, what kind of network created in community networks. So we realized that there is one is point to point. Just, there was an internet at some point, and we wanted to take it to some other point, and just one single point to point. And then the second was point to multi-point. So you take from one location to the other location, and then from other location to other location, and that's only to a stage. And then there is this mesh, which is point to multi-point, and then multi-point to multi-point, and then keep on growing like mushroom, and and then point to hub and spoke. You create a huge hub where you try to create a lot of work. You want to use it as a big, public access point. But from there, you take to spoke locations where it can be used as a service, as an educational access point, and so on and so forth. And then there is a point from where within a kilometer of, let's say, 2, 3, or 4, or even up to 10, point to moving multi-point. So we experimented this in many deserts and many salt pan areas where we had a 1 point, and then we went to, created like 20 points in the radius of about, let's say, about 20-30 kilometers. And then to all those 20 points in different locations, we marked the catching point, and then we put a antenna on the vehicle, and then vehicle will go there, stop there, open its shed and various tablets and all that, and the kids and the local people will come and work and use it, and then the vehicle will go to the other point, and then other point, and then other point. This we experimented in some areas. Then we have hyper local intranet where it is very difficult to even get internet. So you create your own network, local hyper local intranet, I would say. And you live without internet, or you live with time lagged internet or something like that, right? But you have a joy of creating an intranet on visual linkages. And then you have boosted internet, in the sense that, like one projects we did with ISOC Foundation in the Assam tea garden, and that's a case that I wanted to talk. We started with 50 tea gardens, and these tea gardens are very interesting because tea gardens are a point of historical inflection where you will go and see indigenous communities have been hoarded together in one place, and they have been living a bonded labor life, and they have no idea what is their right and how to get their entitlements and so on and so forth. And since they are extremely green, it's also difficult to take network at a very low cost from one point to the multi-point. So we realized that we can also create a booster, in those available GSM links, and then we create a hyper local, access points. And then lately, we discovered one more very interesting connectivity is a vehicle that we have created for disaster areas. Let me know if at any point of time you have problem in screen. So this we are calling as 3B on wheels, which is bytes beyond bandwidth. This is again a disaster-prone area in Uttarakhand, where Internet Society Foundation has supported, and we have created an area which actually take advantage of these 4 points very interestingly. Satellite link, very high frequency repeaters, high frequency communication tools, and then long range Wi-Fi, and also create a localized GSM network. And this is interestingly also use ham radios connectivity, and there is a person who has invented innovated a program where you can do a data transfer on ham radio frequency network. And this one we are deploying among many things in some of the disaster areas, and we are trying to see that how this vehicle can go into that area and create a 24/7 communication system, so that the people, if they are facing any problem, they can also communicate. This is one. And I will end by mentioning 3 kind of spatial case study, which is nothing to do with community networks per se as the quality and quantity, but it is more to do is how community network is actually at the time when we are reaching almost to the level of saturation in terms of telco-based connectivity, is purpose-based, connectivity. So, we go, because we know that most of the remote areas very sparse. And what do you do if it is very sparse? Because most of the commercially driven telco providers won't come there. So, for example, India has got few hundred linguistically, deprived community, and endangered community. There are like Lepcha, like Toto Pada, Toto language, and so on and so forth. So I'll give example of, apart from Tea Garden, which I already told, where we are also trying to capture the local culture and local heritage and local music through the network that is available there. There is this community called Toto, who are only 1,500 left in North Bengal, very just next to Bhutan. And not even a single person, perhaps only one person is a graduate from that community. And there was no connectivity there and all that. And we recently started a connectivity where they are actually digitizing the long developed font that they had developed from Toto. And they are trying to record all the local linguistically driven cultural content and so on and so forth. Similarly, before this, we had gone to Lepcha community. It is another area called Kalimpong in North Bengal, where there, from the community, one programmer became quite famous. He got many awards, and he started developing software. So he developed a LMS to teach Lepcha language to many people, Lepcha community, who left Lepcha community and gone somewhere else, and they didn't know their own language. So those are the very interesting development that has taken place. And another interesting thing that has happened that we have been able to create is that if you look at this map, you see how many logos are involved here. We have been able to also affect and impact many CSR fund for mostly technological companies, because they understand the impact of technology, to route their CSR money to build community networks or build last mile connectivity for the purpose that they would like to fund, for maybe poverty alleviation, language preservation, cultural preservation, or access to entitlements, and so on and so forth. And that has actually helped us to create a huge network of community networks. Last thing, which I always repeat, and Carlos knows that, and he has also tried to find out if it is impactful, is that at the time of COVID, we could get the attention of the government of India to quote community networks implemented by DEF in India as a model to formulate their policy. And they came out with a policy called PM Vani, which actually liberated internet service provision cost forever at a micro and nano level. So anybody and everybody can buy internet and sell internet in order to boost last mile connectivity and give it in the hands of the local entrepreneurs and people. Is it a success? Big question, because what I feel is that community network success or the last mile connectivity success is not only a technological alternatives, but it is also a huge training and capacity building and ownership issue. Because many a times we see that even if we build community networks, if the telco comes, it vanishes. So we have to really move. Our case study has to move from being just an alternative to connectivity to having an alternative to living community networks, which actually can say that, no, I want to use just our own community networks so that I can control my own data, I can control my own culture, I can control my own discipline, I can control my own server, I can control my own behavior and social behavior norms, how we are using. But perhaps for that, we need to look for a very strong case study to be made. And time will tell if we are able to do that. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Osama. And perhaps the questions you're asking there will be responses to that in the next presentation. So I would like to invite Marie-Lisa Dakanay of the Institute for Social Entrepreneurship in Asia to share the impact studies of community-centered connectivity initiatives, especially with Common Room and BAIF. Ms. Lisa, over to you.
Thank you, Gomer. I'd like to request the team on site to please share my slides. I'll basically be talking about or sharing with you the initial results of an ongoing study that the Institute for Social Entrepreneurship in Asia is actually doing in partnership with APC and with the support of Internet Society. And it's on the social impact and cost effectiveness of community-centered connectivity initiatives. Next slide, please. I'll be sharing with you the objectives of the study, the methodology we used, the analytical tools we used, as well as a description of the 2 cases from Asia. There were actually 4 cases. The 2 other cases are still ongoing, and they're from Africa. I'll share with you our main findings and conclusions. Next slide, please. So the objectives of the study and the methodology that we used are the following. In terms of objectives, we undertook social impact analysis of community-centered connectivity initiatives using 2 tools, which I'll be explaining later. But the methodology was basically case study research, and we did within case and cross-case analysis of the 4 cases, which are still being undertaken in Africa, but the 2 from Asia have been completed, and I'll be sharing this with you in this discussion. Next slide, please. The analytical tools we used were development indexing and social return on investment. And basically, development indexing assists in the quantification of social impacts on major stakeholder groups where simple proxy measures are deemed inadequate. And as an initial study of community-centered connectivity initiatives using development indexing, we were able to craft a framework to define key result areas and sub-elements of such, and potential performance indicators to capture significant social impacts. And we did an approximate qualitative rating of high, medium, and low to determine the significance of a performance indicator under each key result area based on extent of reach and depth of impact. No? We also used social return on investment, which is a measure of cost effectiveness. And social return on investment is basically a ratio where the numerator is the aggregate monetized value of all material, financial, and social outcomes experienced by key stakeholders on an intervention program, and the denominator is the aggregate monetized value of all inputs required to run the intervention program. So SROI is the ratio in SROI should be greater than 1 to show cost effectiveness. And so a ratio usually shows that for every dollar of inputs, you see how many dollars of outcomes are created. And there are many challenges of monetization, especially that intangible social impacts such as community empowerment, for example, are quite hard to monetize, but it is feasible. And we will be showing that to you later. Next slide, please. So let me now describe the two cases from Asia that we did. One is Kasepuhan Chip Tagilar in West Java, Indonesia, involving a Sundanese indigenous village. And the other one is in Maharashtra in Western India, involving Pathardi, CCCI, where 99% of the population are part of the Warli tribe. No? So in these two cases, the community stakeholders were deeply engaged in the establishment, management, and extension of the community-centered connectivity initiatives. And so in Kasepuan Chip Tagilar, it was initiated by an entrepreneurial nonprofit common room. And at the moment, village chiefs and the village council and structures now manage the community-centered connectivity initiative. In the case of Pathardi, it was also initiated by an entrepreneurial nonprofit called BAIF. And now the Pangkayat village government manages, operates, and supports the community-centered connectivity initiatives. So in terms of financial sustainability, both CCCIs are actually using different models. In Kasepuan Chip Tagilar, they basically sustain the initiative with voucher sales. But in Pathardi, the Pangkayat village government allocates funds annually to the Gram Pangkayat Development Plan, so that internet service is actually provided as a public good. Yeah. Next slide, please. So let me now share with you the results of the development indexing study. We saw that significant social impacts of community-centered connectivity initiatives have been mainly facilitated by what we call social inclusion and transformational services. On my screen, you would see that on the left side, there are transactional services that are actually being provided by community-centered connectivity initiatives, such as the provision of internet service through vouchers, no? In the case of Kasepuan Chip Tagilar. But there are other services, such as social inclusion services like digital literacy training, online publishing of curricula and training materials for the villagers, podcasts and workshops on local content development, including documentation of traditional knowledge and technology, as well as the development of the village culture through digital storytelling, children's music, and the documentation, dissemination of events and relevant themes, including themes such as the women's roles and their daily life. Yeah? But apart from social inclusion services, we also noted transformational services being provided, and these include training and capacity building of technicians and locals to undertake monitoring, maintenance, and repair of internet tools and devices, the community-centered connectivity initiative management and administration, and to conduct training and sharing sessions on the healthy and safe use of the internet. It also includes capacity building and support to set up and manage Siga Sakola, or Media Lab, as a center for local content production and dissemination, and to enable villagers to produce local media content. Lastly, the transformational services included capacity building for locals to manage and extend internet services to adjacent villages. So this is in the case of Kasepuan Chip Tagilar. So what are these services? Next slide, please. Transactional services are usually connectivity services accessed through financial or other forms of agreed transaction in exchange for the services. No? So transactional services may be provided as well by ordinary ISPs, but ordinary ISPs will not be providing the two other types of services, which only CCCIs, we've noted, provide. So social inclusion services that community-centered connectivity initiatives provide, as shown by the two cases, are oriented towards addressing digital exclusion and meaningful connectivity or other factors behind the usage gap. No? So it enables connectivity to assist the poor and marginalized to have better access to basic needs, social and economic services. And transformational services, on the other hand, are oriented towards enabling the poor and excluded to have the capability to become actors of their own development and to enable their capability to own, govern, and manage digital resources to positively impact on their lives and their communities. So social inclusion services are usually directed at the potential users or customers of digital-related services, while transformational services are directed at those who are capacitated to provide, manage, operate the provision of digital-related services to communities. Next slide, please. So as shown by the two cases, these social inclusion and transformational services that I shared with you facilitated impacts that clearly demonstrate the value proposition for investing in community-centered connectivity initiatives as they relate to key result areas such as increased levels and capacities for inclusive human development and community empowerment, improvement in the economic position and conditions of community stakeholders, more effective preservation of the cultural identity, heritage, and integrity of the community, and increased levels and capacities for climate action and natural resource management. Next slide, please. So let me show you some examples in terms of what increased levels and capacities for inclusive human development and community empowerment mean for the two cases. In Casepuan Chip Taguilar, this meant a greater social cohesion and political participation with performance indicators like enhanced social relations within the households or among community members, heightened political awareness and engagement, better capacity to promote social order and fight unacceptable behavior. And then 5 years since the establishment, the share of women using the internet has increased from 30 to 50% in 2024, and also enabling stakeholders to have control over resources, decisions, and the capability to use such effectively to effect sustainable change. In the case of Patardi community-centered connectivity initiatives, this key result area was expressed in terms of improved skills and competence in delivering digital services, particularly by tribal women who they call EDOSTs, who became digitally literate and capable of using digital technology such that they became effective in delivering the digital services to the community members. So also in Patardi, we see the empowerment of the community to own and manage the physical infrastructure and the performance indicator being equipped, that they were equipped in the maintenance of the physical infrastructure to ensure smooth operation of the internet connectivity. For key result area 2, next slide please, we could see an improvement in the economic position and conditions of community stakeholders as shown in some of the performance indicators I'm sharing with you. I'm not able to share everything, but just a glimpse. No? So in the case of Casepuan Chip Taguilar, we see an increase in household assets, an increase in the financial resources to support the increase in consumption or avoidance of overborrowings by villagers. We also see improved capability to use new adaptive farming techniques to climate change and integrating traditional practices with new technologies. And in the case of Patardi, community-centered connectivity initiatives, we see that tribal women started generating their income or increased their savings, and the tribal women who were the EDOSTs also started saving by opening bank accounts, which are indicators of financial empowerment. Also, those that actually were doing selling expanded their markets online with an increased customer base and improved earnings. Next slide, please. For key result area number 3, about more effective preservation of the cultural identity, heritage, and integrity of the community, it was strongly shown in these 2 indigenous communities served that this impact has been very strong. In Kasipuan Chip Taguilar, we saw the more effective documentation of cultural activities, archive records, and they were shared with the younger generation. So improved capacity for local knowledge preservation and creation was seen as very strong. And also a better achievement of societal awareness of the indigenous village by sharing information with other indigenous communities and academic communities, among others, of the state of the village. No? So we saw that there was greater awareness of the society at large of the indigenous community's existence and traditions. Particularly in Patardi, we saw the improved capacity for the preservation of local knowledge through more effective and comprehensive documentation and archiving, such that information could be shared with the younger generation and the outside world. And there's also enabling of production of local content, such as images, videos, and audio recordings that are actually uploaded. For the 4th key result area, which is actually about climate action and natural resource management, in Kasipuan Chip Taguilar Community-Centered Connectivity Initiative, we saw greater awareness of climate challenges and knowledge of disaster preparedness, an improved capability to avoid or minimize loss of lives and property amid disasters, and improved access to more appropriate assistance to recover and build post-disaster. In the case of Patardi, we saw crop diversification and improved land technology as shown by more crop varieties and higher yields, and also biodiversity conservation and development as shown by indigenous seed varieties that are more systematically preserved, developed, and propagated. So these were the results of the development indexing study component. I'll now turn to the social return on investment component of the study. The social return on investment analysis of the Kasipuan Chip Taguilar Community-Centered Connectivity Initiative yielded social return on investment ratios above 1 over a period of 4 years and a consistent upward trend every year, as you can see, from 1.45 on year 1 to 2.89 on year 4. No? And there's an upward trend every year showing cost effectiveness and an increase in the societal value created over time. I won't be able to discuss the details of how they were monetized, but we went through a process that actually used the social return on investment a tool that is used by that has been used by Social Value International, and that's actually available online if you want to see that social return on investment tool. Next slide, please. In the case of Patardi CCCI, it also yielded social return on investment ratios above 1 over a period of 3 years with a consistent upward trend every year. So from 1.53 to 7.89. So in both cases, we see that they were both cost effective, and there's an upward trend of creating more social value over time. Next slide, please. So in conclusion, the initial results of our study in Asia show that community-centered connectivity initiatives provide social inclusion services and transformational services that generate significant social impacts beyond what commercial ISPs can offer. Social inclusion and transformational services facilitated impacts clearly demonstrate the value proposition for investing in community-centered connectivity initiatives, especially as they relate to the KRAs I've already discussed. And social return on investment ratios that have been shown being all above 1 and their consistent upward trend every year demonstrate the increase in social value created by community-centered connectivity initiatives over time. And so this shows that CCCIs are cost-effective in bridging the digital divide. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Dr. Lisa. We now go to a sharing of the community networks mapping in Asia Pacific by Adrian Wan of the Internet Society.
Morning, everyone. Testing, testing. So let me share my slides. Okay, I think we're set. To kick things off, I'll introduce myself briefly. I am Adrian Wen. I'm with the Internet Society. It's a great pleasure to see so many familiar and new faces here, and I look forward to saying hi to you in person after this. In the next 20 minutes or so, I will go through another study that's different from the one that Ms. Lisa just talked about. But you'll see on the screen, we have the same partners, APC, ISEA, and the Internet Society. And it's our privilege for the Internet Society to be part of this, to be one of the supporters of this new study that I will tell you a bit about. But a brief word about who we are. If you don't know anything about the Internet Society, we are a global non-profit organization. We were founded by the creators of the Internet in 1992 to empower communities around the world to protect this technology, the Internet, that we all use today. We have more than 130,000 individual members around the world. They join our local chapters in more than 100 countries around the world, and and we have around 130 chapters and special interest groups. You'll find interest groups on topics including affordable broadband and AI and other technology policy issues. We do have around 80 organization members. They include organizations from business, from academia, and other NGOs as well. I guess this is understood by now, but this is to give you the context of why what we're talking about today is so important. According to the ITU, the latest facts and figures from the end of last year, there are 2.6 billion people offline, and that's around a third of the world's population. And it can be seen from the data that 5G mobile network, which I think we enjoy very well in Thailand today. I've used it and to great benefit, but technology like this only reaches around 40% of the world, and so 4G remains a pathway to meaningful connectivity for so many people, but that only reaches around 39% of the population in low-income countries. So as more of us talk about things like AI, metaverse or 5G in developed markets, people in low-income countries are falling farther and farther behind. That's why we say there is persistent, widening digital divide, leaving people in low-income countries behind. And that's why what we do today, what we talk about today, is so important. Just to take a step back and share, well, I think we've covered this topic enough by now, but if it's any help, complementary, community-centered connectivity is one way of, is a complementary way of connecting people to the internet. We call it a complementary way because it's not the conventional way. The conventional way is the profit-making model where ISPs and telcos put in the investment, build the network, and attract customers, right? But in rural areas, in underserved areas, that they don't derive the income, the returns on investment required to run a business, and that's why a new model or something more creative is needed. The study we took on is entitled Understanding Community-Centered Connectivity Initiatives in Asia and the Pacific. As I said, APC took the lead, and ISEA and Internet Society are the supporters. Well, one of the objectives is to give an overview. We've talked a lot about CCCIs in APAC now. So this wants to take a bird's eye view on the landscape of CCCIs in APAC and the role of social enterprises and CCCIs in addressing the digital divide. Again, a bit like what Osama did 2 presentations ago, it'd be great if we could tell, where exactly are the CCCIs and tell people, where's the location. So before this, there was no exhaustive effort on this. Our methodology was a mix of different ways of collecting input. From our literature review, we identified 331 projects, and through an online survey we collected 276 responses, and we did key informant interviews with 31 organizations representing 42% of the CCCIs that we spoke to. In total, we identified 1,417 CCCIs in Asia and the Pacific. You can see in the pie chart that most of them, more than half of them, are in South and Southwest Asia, and followed by Southeast Asia and Pacific, Central and North Asia, and East and North Asia get a really small part of the pie. This is going to be tricky to read for most of you, but basically, you'll find a link to the report later on in the presentation, which will contain this table. So basically, it's a display showing where the CCCIs are and in which country. You'll find some higher numbers in some countries, like India, like Myanmar, like Philippines, and we think one of the contributing factors is the presence of internet pioneers in those countries. For instance, it has to be said, Osama did a great job, a huge effort in pushing for connectivity in India. He listed around 280 such efforts in India, and that's one of the reasons why you'll see a number like that in India, and including Thailand as well. We just heard from Nuntapat, and his colleague Kanchana has been working effortlessly in this space for many years. But you'll notice that not all the countries are listed in the table. In fact, there are no CCCIs in 23 countries in Asia and the Pacific. And you find that, excuse me, and for various reasons, right? So some of them have their country entirely covered by 4G, 3G, 5G, and there's no need for that. So it's not that if there's no CCCI, it's a bad thing. Sometimes it's not needed for the country. And our observation was that most CCCIs were set up in or after 2021, and if you recall, that's the COVID period. And most of them remain active at the time of research, and most of them you'll find they're in low-income countries. When Carlos gave us the typology and the overview, we talked a bit about this just now already. Basically, there are different types of CCCI models. One of them is self-provision. Think of them as community-run networks, perhaps smaller scale, perhaps a few households. And then there could be the social business, then entrepreneurial, non-profit, and public municipal, which are government-run efforts. In terms of technology, we find that a big majority use household or office Wi-Fi hotspot, and some of them use public Wi-Fi hotspots as well. And what are the motivations for people behind the 1,400 or so CCCIs for doing something like that? We found that for different models, they have different purposes. For instance, for the self-provision and social business model, well, first and foremost, they want a stable and affordable internet for the community. And then they want to bring in value-added services like digital literacy and technical training that Ms. Lisa just mentioned are so important. They also do local content creation, like the podcast for the local community that we just mentioned as well. Some of them do printing or device charging to generate income. And of course, this is to help the community meet their basic needs like education, healthcare, and government services. For social enterprises, it's a bit different. They look for enhanced productivity and income generation. When they do embark on a CCCI, they look for ways to boost operational efficiency and expand its market reach, especially in sectors like agriculture and local commerce. They also seek to generate social impact and wealth creation on top of the community empowerment that's also present in the self-provision and social business models. When we surveyed the various models of CCCIs, we found that almost all of them involve the community organizations or members as service providers, resellers, and/or end users, and not as a fellow manager of the telecom infrastructure. So we found that there was a limited direct involvement in passive infrastructure. The result of that is there is a dependency on external funding for many of these CCCIs. A bit on financing and pricing. We found that the CCCIs are mainly funded by grants by nonprofit organizations and development partners. Some combine their own resources with grants, whereas on the OPEX, the operational costs, we've talked about the vouchers just now, like Wi-Fi vouchers, and sometimes government funding, advertising, and subscription fee comes into the formula as well. What does it mean to partner communities that they do this? What are the benefits? we categorize them into social, economic, and environmental. For social benefits, obviously there is an opportunity to improve digital inclusion, to give them government service access and cultural preservation, on top of the education and healthcare access that this gives. Nuntapat talked about the environmental side of the sensor-enabled network. That helps a lot with disaster response, and it all in terms of social benefits. It also helps to pass on knowledge about network operations and digital literacy to the community. On the economic side, giving the partner communities internet, increase their market access and job creation prospects, and also they can run their own businesses online, like perhaps people selling their goods if they run a store. Yeah, we talked about the environmental just now, so I'll skip that. We found a couple of key challenges, and they come in a few categories. First and foremost is the policy and regulatory related barriers. They tell us it's really complex and time-consuming to have to handle all the licensing requirements in their own countries. Different countries have different requirements depending on what you want to do. Very few have a separate license for CCCIs, and most of them require them to look at which one fits them. Sometimes they need to apply for an ISP license or network related license, depending on how many people use the service as well. So as a remote community, they find it really time-consuming and really confusing to have to do that. So we think there's a lack of support, policy support, and sometimes inconsistent regulations as well. And that's about the inconsistent enforcement of different policy and regulations as well. You'll find that so perhaps one day person A does this and it's approved, person B does the same. It may not be approved, so sometimes it's not really clear what can work and what cannot. So this is what this is about. There's also the key issue of lack of spectrum resources, that's a really key policy-related barrier that we see. In terms of financial viability, as we said, many of them rely on external funding, and they struggle with long-term sustainability. In some countries, there are restrictions on foreign funding, so they're not allowed to accept NGOs funding from abroad. And in terms of infrastructure and technical issues, I'd love to hear from our speakers later on, because we find that unreliable power supply is a really key challenge for many CCCIs, and there's a lack of skilled personnel as well. So if we can give them reliable power supply, it's a big help to us reaching the goals of connecting people. Yeah, in the report we have a few recommendations based on what we found. You'll find that they are based on many of the challenges we generated. For instance, we think the government should streamline the licensing and spectrum policies, include CCCIs in national and broadband strategies, and support financial sustainability through incentives. We encourage CCCIs to look at a hybrid funding model, starting with a grant, and meanwhile look at how to generate revenue so that they can gain financial sustainability beyond the term of the grant, be it 1 year or 2 years. On technical and capacity development, we think there should be more technical training on how to run the networks, and also we think it'd be really helpful for there to be a knowledge sharing platform for all CCCIs in the region or beyond. We think CCCIs should invest in resilient, climate adaptive infrastructure, and again, that goes to the point of environmental protection. And this is a really key point about gender inclusion. We think there should be more, women-focused training, and there should be a safe space for, access, entrepreneurship support. Again, we concluded in the report that they have evolved, over the past, decades. It's been more than a decade since they came about. They've evolved from purely community-owned to now, hybrid models involving social enterprises, government, and businesses. They've come to be a crucial way to bridge the digital divide, and they've proven to be a viable model for inclusive connectivity. So looking forward, we think the future of CCCIs in APAC requires balancing social impact with financial sustainability while navigating the complex policy environment as well. That we think there should be continued innovation in technology and business models so that they can evolve and work in different times as well. But still, no matter how the models or the policy requirements change, we think what's special about CCCIs, what makes them magical, is that they put community at the center. And that's why we think community empowerment will always remain crucial. That's why we call them community-centered connectivity. This is the report. You'll find a PDF on this page, so feel free to scan the QR code and get access to this APC website. And if you can't catch it, I'll share it with you later on. That concludes my part. Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you. I'd like also to add that the presentations will be available online. So please indicate your email address at the registration table so that you can receive the complete set of presentations. I now call on our last speaker, from one Adrian to another Adrian. We have Adrian Lasimbang from the Right Energy Partnership and the Indigenous Peoples Major Group on Sustainable Development to share experiences and visions of Indigenous peoples for digital inclusion, its linkage to a just energy transition and economic empowerment. Over to you, Adrian, too.
Okay, you can address me as Bunny.
Bunny, yes.
Oh, sorry about that. I'm having a bit of a sore throat, so bear with me. So yeah, I think I'd like to share some of our experience with regards to addressing those sort of gaps when we want to bring in digital connectivity. And the most important part is like, can we address the energy part of it? Because that is actually the most basic parts of the digital inclusion, because I think these are very important issue. Without reliable and also affordable energy, it's very hard to actually provide meaningful and also consistent connectivity through the systems. So I just want to start by providing some insights or the context of the challenges that faced by Indigenous peoples around the world. First of all, I think most of us know that a lot of communities, especially indigenous peoples, now in very small pockets of communities isolated in very remote regions. So this is actually the what we call the last mile communities, and it's more challenging because looking at it in a normal government or business context, it's too small to make business, right? So this is the much more challenging because of the isolation and also the places that we live. It's mountainous, it's very remote, and so on. And this is why a lot of the issue with regards to this is much related to poor infrastructure and penetration in our communities. And then also the supporting infrastructure such as roads, because we need those in order for us to set up these so-called connectivity systems. It need to be maintained, right? But if there's no road, no place to connect for the maintenance, is going to be very hard. And also electricity is a very much a big challenge for many communities. In the Right Energy Partnership, we strive with trying to reach as much possible energy access. I mean, in our target, we want to reach at least 50 million indigenous communities by 2030. It's a tall order, but actually it can be done if we can work together with different sectors. And this is why I think digital inclusion plays a role in bringing electricity also to communities. This is what sort of model that I'm looking at. So I'm just showing that, the cost of the technology. They always say it's expensive, but I don't think it's expensive, because every time we ask the government, they said it's too expensive to bring this and that, but actually, if you look at it if you bundle it up with other benefits or other services, I think it's not going to be that expensive. So I think if we have to look at how we approach to bring this so-called technology, and also to look at how we want to make sure that the youths are also involved. In indigenous communities, the youths are the most vulnerable, and they are also the first one to be left out. We learned a lot during the COVID when everything went online learning. And I used this photo of this lady. She went viral in YouTube because she had to climb a 30-meter high tree just to send her assignments for her college. And this actually caught attention of our government in Malaysia, but it's only one case. You are talking about thousands of this kind of situations in many other communities. And these are really happening, and without any intervention or a specific way on how to address this, this can continue. We might be talking about 5G, 6G, whatever G we can go, but if we don't address the basics, this sort of communities continue to be left out. Also, the issue is communities, especially indigenous communities, are still running on subsistence economy. So if we're going to be bringing market-based solutions, this is going to be very difficult because we don't have cash economy, because we are out of the market. Market is so far from us. So how do we bring something that doesn't need cash as a medium of payment and so on? I think these are some sort of challenges that we need to bring. Some innovation can be done, maybe to looking at how we can do integration of enterprise and so on. And also the last one is like the consistency of this outreach program. I appreciate a lot of the work done by universities, NGOs, who have been reaching out to communities, but sometimes they're only running it based on how much funding they have. Once the funding runs out, the community is like waiting. So what happened next? So a lot of it is still, that is the kind of situation. So I just want to share two case studies in Malaysia. The first one is actually about a telecenter. I think it was a collaboration with our NGOs in Sabah and UNIMAS, University of Malaysia Sarawak, which have been promoting the e-telecenters, e-barrio, e-buayan, and so on. They were basically looking at how to reach these very remote areas in the jungles of Borneo. We have to trek at hours to reach this community, and we have to use satellite communication, VSAT at that time. And there's a lot of literacy program needs to be happening in order for the communities to be able to maintain and operate the system. And also can only be possible when we had renewable energy mini-grid at that time, because this community in Kampung Buayan was selected particularly because we were building a micro-hydro microgrid there. And because of this system managed to work for at least 8 years until the subscription of the VSAT is finished. And then it actually ends there. So that is still one of my biggest learning lessons learned that we have, because we have to find how to find ways to sustain those initiatives. So the key area that I learned is like there must be a local champion in every project, because if you're relying on outside technician, anything, small things about this electronic stuff can go wrong. And if you don't have someone to be there and to be able to service that, it's going to be very problematic. And from 5 ringgit or $1 problem into like $1,000 problem, it can escalate very fast. So and also it can only be possible if we have 24/7 electricity. The other thing is, like, of course, during that project, the university was trying to see, extend the benefit of the VSAT from just telecommunication, calling, and internet access to online marketing and so on. But again, the reality kicks in because of the remoteness and how do you what kind of product you can promote. Yeah, so that appropriate development needs to happen also hand in hand in order for us to be able to have a meaningful impact on the project. And also, it is not sustainable because the high running cost of that VSAT, and the community have also very low purchasing power. So if we're going to require the community to pay the subscription fee after X amount of years, then it's not going to work. Then in fact, yeah, it can be burdensome. It can be a burden to the community if we are not careful and we don't have any a clear exit strategy when we implement this project. So you can see some of the equipment we had to live by helicopter to reach that site. So it's really going to the last mile communities here. The second study is much more recent, and the other one is like because this initiative was very much an educational base. The goal was to educate the people. I think they got a lot of subsidies from the government, from corporate, and so on. So this helps in terms of bringing some of those available money to where it needed. But not all of this money is always available. The second case study is just recently completed, is to look at enterprise development approach, where instead of doing this as an education, we build a center specifically for socio-economic development, and it actually housed the mini grid, and we have the connectivity. So everything come from that one, and then extend it to the smart grid, because we are also doing this for DRECs, the distributed renewable energy credits. So to do so, we have to have monitoring system anyways. So it's already paying for itself. So it's just basically extending what is already there at the center. So that is the model. So we're using at the moment Starlink terminal, and then we use LoRa to extend the range of the connectivity to the household level, because we're also monitoring how much the community is using. And also paying for the system, yeah. And the most important part that we learned from this is like the indigenous women are very excited to be entrepreneur. They want to sell the product. They have so much product to be offered, but there's no way we can do that without having that energy access. That's why I think it's very important for us to find ways on how to make digital inclusion and energy transition come hand in hand. And then small online businesses can happen even within the community. So when they had the WhatsApp group, every day I can, because I'm also in the group, so they start selling like even within the community, barter trading within that digital community of themselves. So it's very interesting to see how the community have been using these sort of tools made available through because of this energy access project that we had. And then also money, they make a little bit of money because there's also outsiders who come to the village nearby the schools. They sell Wi-Fi coupons. So it actually covers some of those monthly subscription for the Starlink. And then also because I mentioned earlier, the smart grid actually is already on directs, so it's already paying for itself because it's required to monitor the system anyway. So these are something that is potentially can be replicated in many communities who doesn't have the facility yet. And I think the last call I want to make in my presentation is the last mile must be our first mile, because if we can reach the last mile, it's very easy for us to go outside, because any strategy that can reach the last mile communities can be able to support the other communities that is going out. So thank you so much for that. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much, Bani. And I guess those last words are very powerful, that in our efforts to actually leave no one behind, we should actually reach to the farthest first. Yeah. We're now open for questions and answers before we take a break for lunch. Lunch will be available for our small group at the first floor. Instructions will be given later. But any questions? Maybe I'll invite the speakers first. Adrian, Nantaput, and even Bani to come here in front, as well as the speakers online, Miss Lisa, Osama, and I don't know if we still have Carlos online. For questions coming from the floor here in the UN Conference Center, as well as colleagues online. No questions? Yes. Maybe introduce give your name, your organization, and then your question.
Sure. Okay. Hello. Thank you so much for the very informative presentation. I am Jia. I manage a research institute under Chula and WHO Regional Office, so it's a collaboration. So really, my area of knowledge is not so much in this area, but on health in general. And so I have a couple of questions, especially about data, because I was very interested, when we mentioned, I think, under Net to Home, the collection of data on PM 2.5 tracking, source of burning and all this. And I think it would be of interest both to academia as well as government, whether it's in response or communications on the ground. So I'm very interested in this, especially since data ownership was mentioned at some point as well. My other comment actually, especially about consistency in power supply, because I think it's a really important point. From what I understand from some acquaintances in Myanmar, I think I think they are using solar powered power banks as well, especially for the devices and all that. So I think when you mentioned renewable energy, I think that's a great way as a possible model. Thank you.
Thank you. We can get more questions for colleagues to process before we go back to our speakers. Yes.
Hi, my name is Brenda. I'm from Singapore Buddhist Study Foundation. So recently we have a project with our overseas chapters in Dominica and even in East Africa, Mozambique. We faces some problems, like for example, for grassroots organizations or faith-based organizations like Tzu Chi, how can we bring in the expert from CCIS or from various organizations and presenters who are online that can help grassroots organization to recognize our problems and tackle on what can be done to improve our methodology to help those children to receive adequate and enough digital education through the experts in this floor. Thank you.
Hi, I just wanted to ask to anyone in the panel. Actually, there have been quite many mentions of the barriers to telecoms, e-commerce activities in rural areas where there also happens to be a large aging population group, quite disadvantaged groups. Never mind the poor revenue for the telecom services, never mind the regulatory barriers. And by the way, there has actually been quite some successes in digital enterprises targeting villages. For example, in Indonesia, there's Digital Desa, which is like a platform for villages. But anyway, my question is, what are the key challenges, opportunities for the private sector to work in these areas, the rural areas, catering to the needs of the aging population or older population, to the indigenous tribes? How can we convince them to invest in this area, knowing that they will be supporting the SDGs? Could it be in leveraging ESG, in that kind of area, in that kind of track? What recommendations would you have to increase engagement with the local tribes, for example? Yeah, that's it. Thank you.
One more question before we go.
Okay, hello, I'm Rita from Indonesia. So I'm on behalf of people with disabilities, and also we assisting people with disabilities in communities, specifically in the rural in Java Island and also Papua, and also in Nusa Tenggara Timur. So my questions, well, actually, this is my expertise is in universal design. Actually, I'm very interesting to ask because while we are assisting people with disability in a rural area, specifically in livelihood, increasing their livelihood and engage them with the digital, we facing a lot problem with the technology itself who are not accessible for people with disabilities, especially in the rural area. My question is, do you have any experiences regarding to this? Because in Indonesia, we have, for the example, like in health sector, currently we have a digital health application or platform, which is very difficult, still difficult for people with disabilities, especially sensory disability, sensory and elders to engage with that digital platform, because the accessibility of the digital itself is not accessible for them. So because it's important, because on the livelihood, I'm very interested with your experiences in Borneo, that it's kind of same like in Java. Even people say Java Island is a more good condition than other island, but it's not, because we have a very rural area still in Java Island and far away from the technology. So that's my question about universal design on the context of the platform digital. Thank you.
Finally, let's get Joel for the last
Yeah,
for this
hi.
round.
Joel from KCAT. We're a ISP that's been running some community-centered initiatives in the Philippines. I'm just really curious because it popped up quite a few times, the discussions about teaching these communities to go into content production. I'd like to hear more about that, especially since in my experience, when you go to very far away, isolated places, your average person's a lot shy to do content. And I mean, there are a lot of great stories to tell in these places. I'm wondering how everyone went about getting these people to share and actually produce the content.
Okay, so maybe we go to our speakers, depending on the questions that you would like to answer. The first one is around digital integrity as it relates to the Net to Home initiative in Thailand. The second one is assistance with colleagues in Africa and probably connect them to experts in the room. And then the fourth one is inclusive design. The other one speaks on what do you call this? Engaging private sector to actually to go to communities and to provide connectivity to older people. And then, of course, the final question on content. No, maybe we can start with Bani here.
Okay, can I just use this mic?
Yeah.
Thank you so much. I just briefly, based on my experience with regards to these few questions, I think energy access is very important, but especially to make it affordable, that is a big challenge. So just to want to share how we managed to get corporate sponsors, because you know, Malaysia is an upper middle income country, so we don't have ODA. So we have to work on what we have in our country. So a lot of the funding is actually coming from ESG program. So we package it as something on a low carbon development. Secondly, we also package it as addressing digital divide and also the electricity access. So that's how we managed to get corporate sponsorship, because they like to see not multiverse, but multi-pronged approach in terms of addressing these different key issues. Reaching out to very remote communities requires a very specific design on the methodology and also the approach. So the key is the process, consultation, FPIC, and all this. So for us, because I work for an indigenous organization, we take free prior informed consent as very serious process. And in fact, the free prior informed consent process provides us a lot of ideas, because actually the engagement provides us a little bit more time to address or understand the problem, and then we go through a process of co-creating the solutions. So that's using the FPIC process as opportunity to co-create program during the project development phase. That's my experience. So I think that's all I have to share for now. Thank you.
Nantapat or Adria? If not, maybe we can go to our resource persons online. If you would want to address any of the questions earlier, I'm inviting Carlos, Osama, Miss Lisa.
Yeah, maybe I could address the question on local content production. I think for the two cases that we actually studied in Asia, both Kasipuan Chip Tagilar and also the Patardi community-centered connectivity initiatives, local content production and dissemination was a very important aspect of the interventions. And I think there are two things that are very important here. The first has to do with the role of youth, because I think the youth in the local communities play an important role in the process of digitizing local practices, local culture, local events, in order for them to be uploaded, no, in the knowledge portals as well as in the system. The other thing is the importance of building and capacitating local institutions to actually do the local content production. No? This was very strong, for example, in Kasipuan Chip Taguilar, no? The village government, the common room enabled the village government to create a distinct infrastructure, a distinct structure that actually had the capability to produce local content and to enable locals to engage in local content production and dissemination. Thanks.
Osama, do you want to go, or can I go and addressing briefly?
I'll go with after you.
Okay, thanks. So the person that is looking to for experts or for people with more knowledge to engage with partner and grassroots communities in Mozambique, other places of East Africa, Dominica, please share your email with Adrian or with Gomer, and we will get back to you and see who is in those countries or countries nearby where we can organize a similar session, or sharing that expertise or pointing you towards resources that we have created over the years. In relation to the private sector and incentivizing the private sector to do this, it's a tricky question, right? What are the incentives of the private sector? Is the private sector to profiteer from poor and marginalized communities? Then maybe there is not much there, right? Where the private sector has seen a space to profiteer, whether big multinational companies or smaller companies, they have done so already. And in doing so, they haven't done it neither meaningfully or sustainably for poor and marginalized communities. That's why a third of the people in the planet doesn't have access to meaningful connectivity, because those traditional market approaches and profit-first approaches towards connectivity have not really closed the digital divide, right? If those private sector members do want to engage along the lines of the principles that we share, that want to engage along the principles of social entrepreneurship, that want to engage with the communities as stakeholders, then I think we should work together. And there are many examples, such as the one that was presented by Net2Home, and I'm sure Osama can talk about other private sector organizations that are engaging on this. Let's work together. Let's create incentives for that type of social approach and community-first approach towards connectivity. But there needs to be willingness on the private sector, right? If it's profit first, it has proven to fail pretty much elsewhere, and so many companies going into liquidation. So yeah, that's my 2 cents on this. Thank you.
Hi, so I would like to make a little comment on the inclusivity and also from the perspective. So I will not take inclusivity only from the perspective of including the people with disability or people with, other ability. But I would say that community networks actually require a very strong inclusive approach in design, business design also. For example, we learned in India that nobody wanted to fund network, right? They also say that, I want to give money for food, I want to give money for education, I want to give money for this and that, but you don't want to give money for network. And then you say, if you don't have a network, you can't have education, you can't have food, you can't have other thing. So it's very important to make this as an essentiality to access everything else, everything, and then approach, because approach different things, different organization, funders, and even appropriating those who may not be able to fund in this area. That's the first part. The second part is what we have seen is that when we go and do the community networks in far-flung areas, we find people with disability and women are mostly who are non-migratory. They are not looking at leaving the place and going out. And we took advantage of that one to have an inclusive approach from the community who is actually stationed locally. How do we build the capacity around them? And they take responsibility in designing and taking ownership. That's the and then you create additional job for them, you create additional income for them, you create additional engagement for them, and so on and so forth. The third is inclusive, is that most of the time, if you look at last mile connectivity, actually connectivity is a digital public infrastructure, actually speaking, because now everything is based on that. But if we are talking about digital public infrastructure, how can we only approach it from a social inclusion perspective? It has to be from the governance perspective, from administrative perspective, from the local government perspective, and everything. And they must be involved in building this network in terms of all the access that is possible to maintain and manage. These are the three approach. I mean, one is the inclusivity of approach, one is the inclusivity of business design, and one is an inclusivity of ownership in terms of including more and more people who are localized, who are in local community, who are basing, for example, ASHA workers, like, frontline health workers, for example, women, micro nano women entrepreneurs, local governance-based women, and of course, a very significant number of people with various abilities who may not be engaged in different ways. So we have to look this as a prospect for not only technological, but as an enabler. Thank you.
Thank you. In the interest of time, it's already 12 o'clock Bangkok. Maybe I'll give the floor for comments from Nantaput and Adrian.
Testing. I'd just like to address some of the issues raised just now. And I think Osama raised a great point that the connectivity, the internet, is not an end in itself. It's a means to a better life for the communities. And I think that in some way answers the question about people with disabilities, and also I think it was Brenda who raised there are opportunities to engage people engage grassroots and faith-based organizations in East Africa, in Mozambique, and in a way it answers the questions about the private sector engagement as well. We have in our work reached out to many private businesses to try and get their support. And like Carlos said, they look for profit, and naturally when they work with us, they ask, what are the numbers you can show us, what you can bring to our business after all. So the model is really different from us, which puts the community at the center. So the trick is how to pull the two together and get the support. And meanwhile, if we can achieve the putting remaining community at the center, that'd be great. And one way to do that we have found is let them know they are contributing to a global issue, and in a way, they are tackling issues that are aligned with, for instance, the national broadband strategy where they're operating. So in most cases, that would be the case to convince them, to support, for support. But we that is not to say we will sacrifice the principle of putting community at the center. That's not a possibility. So, Nontapan, I'm not sure if you want to say. Yeah.
All right. From my experience, I've been involved with people in local rural areas quite much, and I have learned that first they will try to against us. We need to come to be one of them first, and we try to learn how they live in that community areas, and we try to catch what they need, and then we will build the network or community telecom inside network for that purpose.
Thank you very much. I guess we're closing the session at this point, and have Adrian again say the message of thanks on behalf of the organizers.
Yeah, just a really quick short message to say thank you very much, everyone. Either you're online with us, I see there are more than 40 people, around 50 at one point, so that was really, really lovely, and there are many in the room as well. Really happy to see all of you. We'll be serving lunch, right? Can you tell us a bit more about the lunch?
Yes. Before we go to the lunch announcement, thank you to the Institute for Social Entrepreneurship in Asia, the United Nations Economic and Social Commission for Asia and the Pacific, the Association for Progressive Communications, Internet Society, Right Energy Partnership with Indigenous Peoples, the Indigenous Peoples Major Group for Sustainable Development, and the Social and Community Enterprise Constituency of the Asia Pacific Regional CESO Engagement Mechanism for organizing this event. Lunch will be at the first floor, where you will get your cards with your trays. You can actually order any food with the maximum of 350 baht, and we will collect the cards. See me or see any of our ESCAP colleagues after lunch, so we can pay the cards for you. Yeah. That's how we'll do it, because we didn't have the vouchers, the system working this morning. And before
Hey everyone, enjoy your lunch.
Osama, let's take a photo together with the participants in the room. We can actually occupy this space.
May we invite everyone to open their cameras so that we will have an online photo, group photo.
Yeah, that's nice.
For participants online, we shared the evaluation link. Please fill it up so that we can improve our future events. Thank you. Okay. Let's wait for a second. Okay, let's for the online participants, maybe we can try it now. Okay, keep on smiling. We have 2 pages. 1, 2, 3, smile. One more. 1, 2, 3, smile.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Bye-bye. Enjoy your lunch.
Thank you.
I'm from